Today we uncover the shocking truth about UK toilet paper. Remember the days when a trip to the school lavatory meant facing a box of that shiny, crackling Izol medicated tissue? We laugh about it now, and rightly so. That old bog roll was scratchy, unforgiving, and about as comfortable as a sheet of greaseproof. But here's the thing that ought to stop you in your tracks. At least back then, you knew exactly what you were dealing with. It was honest. It was simple. It was paper and nothing more. Today, the rolls in your bathroom cupboard look nothing like that. They're cloud-soft quilted, hospital white, and dressed up in adverts full of puppies and soothing promises. But that softness, that pillowy comfort you're paying a premium for, is very often achieved through heavy chemical bleaching, synthetic binders, added fragrance, and optical brighteners designed to trick your eye into thinking bright white means clean and pure. And behind that gentle image, there are some genuinely uncomfortable truths. One of Britain's most trusted household names now builds fragrance straight into the cardboard core of some of its rolls. A scented shortcut that a growing number of shoppers say leaves them with irritation in the last place on earth you'd want it. A supposedly luxurious quilted brand is so thick and so heavily bound that plumbers up and down the country groan every time they pull it out of a blocked drain in an older home. And a hugely popular warehouse favourite is famous for shedding a fine cloud of white dust every time you tear a sheet. The stuff so many long-time buyers now call toilet paper bunnies, coating your skirting boards and settling on every surface in the room. There's a widespread and frankly justified feeling among British shoppers, especially older ones, on a fixed pension that they're being charged a kind of health tax, forced to pay more and more for less and less just to get a product that doesn't shed, doesn't sting, and doesn't quietly fall apart in your hand. The rolls have got narrower, the sheet counts have quietly dropped, and the softness on the label doesn't always survive contact with reality. It's got so bad that lifestyle magazines now report a genuine post-lockdown boom in bidets and little handheld sprayers, as more and more British households simply give up on the paper altogether and look for another way entirely. So we've gone right through the British supermarket shelves, the big brands, the bulk warehouse buys, and the online subscriptions, and we've pulled out 8 toilet rolls you'll want to think twice about for your skin, your plumbing, and your wallet. Then we'll finish with 4 that are genuinely worth your money. Before we expose the first one, please do hit that like button and click the YouTube hype button just below the video. It costs you nothing, and it pushes this investigation out to more British shoppers, so together we can hold these companies accountable and push for better standards on the shelves. It really does make a difference. And let's get into it. Number 8. Andrex. We're starting with the brand that practically raised generations of British families. The puppy, the endless roll tumbling down the stairs, the warm and gentle image that's been sold to us for decades. But it's the scented line that deserves a much closer look. Andrex used to sell a shea butter version too, but that one was very quietly discontinued and pulled from the shelves. But they're still selling the scented roll Ultimate Quilts Aloe. And it's worth pausing on that discontinued one for a second, because it tells you something. That old shea butter roll didn't just have a scent, it was loaded up with shea butter, almond extract, and argan oil, a whole cocktail of added extras sitting on the paper. It sounds less like a toilet roll and more like something off the shelf at a fancy skincare counter, and that, really, is the whole trick of this end of the market. Take the plainest, most functional product in the house, dress it up in the language of luxury and pampering, and charge you handsomely for the privilege. Here's what a lot of shoppers don't realize. That gentle aloe scent isn't sprayed lightly onto the outside of the pack. The fragrance is built into the cardboard core at the very center of the roll, and it migrates outward into the tissue itself as it sits in your bathroom. The idea is to leave a pleasant smell behind. The reality, for a fair few people, is a perfume sitting directly against some of the most sensitive and absorbent skin on the entire body. Now, I want to be careful and fair here, because this matters. There's no proof that this specific roll causes any particular medical condition, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But a real number of shoppers, and women in particular, report unexplained irritation and discomfort, what many politely call issues under the hood, only to find it settles down the moment they switch back to a plain, fragrance-free roll. And it's worth knowing that dermatologists generally advise fragrance-free products for anyone with sensitive skin. As skin naturally thins a little with age, as everyone's does, it becomes far less forgiving of added perfume. So you've got a beloved, trusted brand wrapped in soft and soothing marketing, selling you a scented product at a premium, when the plainest, cheapest option on the shelf would very likely be kinder to you. If you've been buying the scented rolls because they feel like a little luxury, it might be worth asking whether that luxury is really doing you any favors at all. Which brings us to a very different kind of danger, because sometimes the problem with a posh toilet roll isn't what it does to you, it's what it does to your pipes. Number 7. Cushelle Quilted. If the name Charmin rings a bell, that's because this is the brand that quietly replaced it on UK shelves years ago. Cushelle sells itself on one thing above all else, that irresistibly soft, plush quilted feel. The koala, the cuddles, the promise of pillowy comfort. And in fairness, it is soft. The trouble is what that plushness is doing behind the scenes. To get a 3-ply quilted sheet, that thick and that cushioned, you need a fair bit of engineering, embossing and binding to hold all those layers together. And plumbers frequently warn that these ultra-thick, ultra-plush papers are among the worst offenders when it comes to blocked drains, simply because they don't break down as quickly as a thinner roll once they're sitting in cold water. In a lot of older British homes with narrow, aging pipework that was never designed for modern cloud soft tissue, that's a recipe for an expensive call-out. And this is exactly why the consumer testers at Which don't just measure softness these days. When they put toilet rolls through their lab, one of the things they specifically score is how quickly a sheet dissolves, precisely because a roll that won't break down is a roll that ends up sitting in your drains. Think about that trade-off for a moment. You're paying a premium for comfort, and the reward could be a plumber's bill that makes the price of the toilet roll look like loose change. And there's a more recent wrinkle worth knowing. Back in August 2024, the trade press reported that when Essity relaunched Cushelle Quilted as its softest ever version, plenty of long-standing customers weren't impressed at all. They complained that the reformulated sheets actually felt thinner and narrower than before, not more luxurious. So you've got the odd situation of a brand promising more plushness, while regular buyers insisted they were getting less. When the people who've bought something for years all tell you it's gone downhill, it's usually worth listening. It's the same story you hear again and again about modern paper, that quiet consensus among older shoppers that somewhere around the pandemic, all of it got narrower, rougher and quicker to crumble, whatever the packaging kept promising. So think twice before you fill your cupboard with the thickest, plushest roll on the shelf, especially if your home has seen a few decades and your pipes have seen a few more. Now, if you think dropping down to a cheaper scented roll from the discounter avoids all this, I've got some bad news about the bargain aisle. Number 6. Lidl Floralist Super Soft. Every trend that starts with the big premium brands eventually trickles down to the budget aisle, and scented toilet roll is no exception. Lidl's own label Floralist range includes a super soft option with a fragranced core, the discounter's answer to the pricier scented rolls from the household names. And the same basic concern applies here as it did with the branded version. Just at a lower price point, the fragrance sits in the cardboard core and works its way into the tissue. For anyone with sensitive skin, that's the same irritation risk that some shoppers report from the more expensive scented rolls, only now you're getting it on a tight budget. The perfume doesn't become any gentler just because the roll was cheaper. That's the real catch. A shopper on a careful weekly budget, perhaps a pensioner counting every pound and pence, reaches for the soft, nicely scented, affordable option, thinking they've found a little treat that doesn't break the bank. And they may well end up with exactly the sort of stinging discomfort that sends people running back to the plainest roll they can find. There's nothing wrong with Floralist as a cheap, cheerful, everyday paper, but the scented core is the part I genuinely steer clear of. My honest advice with any of these, branded or budget, is simple. If a toilet roll advertises a scent, a fragrance, a lotion, or a perfume, and your skin is at all sensitive, leave it on the shelf. You're not missing out on a single thing your body actually wants. Speaking of things that sound wonderful on the label, but don't quite hold up in the real world, let's talk about a roll that wants you to feel good about the planet. Number 5. Velvet Classic. This is the brand built around a lovely, reassuring promise. 3 trees planted for every 1 used. It's the kind of message that makes you feel like you're doing your bit for the environment every time you restock the bathroom. And who wouldn't want that? But it's worth looking a little closer at what you're actually buying. Velvet Classic is, at heart, a virgin pulp product. That means fresh wood fiber, bleached and processed to get that soft, bright white finish. To be completely fair to them, the paper is FSC certified, so the wood is coming from responsibly managed sources, and that's a genuine point in its favor. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. The catch is more about the impression the marketing creates. Critics point out that planting trees somewhere down the line doesn't change the fact that you're still wiping with a freshly bleached virgin pulp product today. A tree seedling planted this year isn't the same as the mature forest fiber going into the roll right now. The comforting green message can quietly distract from a fairly ordinary, heavily processed product underneath. And it's worth noting the roll itself now averages around 150 sheets, wound to a little over 17 meters, which is a fairly modest length once you strip away all the leafy branding on the wrapper. And here's the thing worth remembering. There are recycled and bamboo options out there that don't need to cut down a fresh tree at all, and so don't need to reassure you by planting new ones to make up for it. When you weigh it up like that, the 3 trees promise starts to feel less like a solution and more like a clever way of framing the problem. It's not the worst roll on this list by a long stretch, but the green halo it wears is doing an awful lot of heavy lifting. Now, from a roll that leans on its environmental image, let's move to one that fills your whole bathroom with something you can actually see. Number 4. Kirkland's Signature Bath Tissue, the Costco one. For a lot of savvy shoppers and plenty of pensioners who've done the maths, the Costco run is a monthly ritual: buy in bulk, buy once, save money. And the Kirkland Signature Triple Satin Tissue is one of the warehouse's most popular staples. On value alone, it's easy to see the appeal: 40 rolls for a sensible price. But there's a well-known downside that regular buyers talk about constantly. This is a roll that sheds. Tear off a few sheets, and you'll often see a fine cloud of white cellulose dust drift into the air and settle on every surface in the room. If you've ever noticed a powdery white film building up along your bathroom skirting boards and windowsills, that's very likely what you're looking at. So many longtime buyers now have a nickname for it. They call them toilet paper bunnies, those little drifts of dust that gather in the corners. And here's a fresh twist worth knowing about. Back in June 2026, Costco shoppers started comparing notes and grumbling that something had changed with this very roll. Buyers reported a noticeably wider cardboard core in the middle, a slightly lighter roll on the whole, and a different feel to the paper, all the little telltale signs that make long-time customers suspicious they're quietly getting a bit less for the same money. The debate rumbled on about whether the usable sheet count had really dropped, but when devoted fans of a bulk buy staple all start noticing the core looks fatter, it's the sort of thing that makes you check the pack a little more carefully next time. Now, I'll be straight with you. The Kirkland roll is fragrance-free and dye-free, which is genuinely a point in its favor, and I'm not going to claim it's harming your lungs, because there's no solid evidence for that at all. But plenty of shoppers, particularly those with sensitive skin or conditions like eczema, simply find the constant dust a nuisance and an irritation they'd rather live without. And here's the particular trap with a bulk buy. When you've committed to 40 rolls, you've locked yourself into months of the stuff. There's no popping back to swap it after a bad week. You're stuck with your decision until the tower in the airing cupboard finally runs out. By the way, before we carry on, I'd genuinely love to hear from you on this one. Do you remember that shiny Izal tracing paper from school, or the pastel pink and blue rolls from the 1980s? Tell me your worst toilet paper memories down in the comments. I read them, and some of them are gloriously grim. From the warehouse bulk buy, let's turn to the absolute bottom shelf of the supermarket. Number 3. Tesco Springforce and other similar budget-owned brands. Every supermarket has its rock-bottom, no-frills toilet roll, and Tesco's is Springforce. It's the one that turns up in the price match deals, the cheapest paper the shop will sell you. And look, when money is genuinely tight, I completely understand reaching for it. Nobody should ever feel bad about buying the cheapest option on a hard week. But it's worth being honest about what you're getting, because the cheapest roll isn't always the best value once you actually use it. Springforce is a thin, two-ply paper, and while it does pack a generous sheet count onto each roll, some shoppers find they simply use more of it per sitting, folding and bunching up extra layers just to feel confident it'll do the job. And every extra fold of a thinner, rougher paper means a bit more friction against skin that, for older buyers especially, has grown thinner and more delicate over the years. That's the false economy at the heart of the bottom shelf. If you're reaching for 2 or 3 times as many sheets as you would with a decent mid-range roll, those pennies you saved at the till have a funny way of quietly vanishing by the end of the month. And you've traded a little comfort for the privilege. I'm not telling you a budget roll is dangerous, because it isn't. But I am saying that the very cheapest paper often isn't the bargain it looks like, and a slightly better mid-tier roll can genuinely work out kinder on both your skin and, over time, your purse. Now let's talk about the modern convenience that promises to save you a trip to the shops altogether. Number 2. Amazon Presto, the online-only own brand. This one's all about convenience. Presto is Amazon's own household range, and for a lot of people, especially anyone with mobility issues who finds lugging a big pack home from a shop a real struggle, the appeal is obvious. Set up a subscription, and the toilet roll simply turns up on the doorstep month after month, without you ever having to think about it. On paper, that's a genuinely helpful thing, and I won't knock it. The problem is what tends to arrive. This is budget paper made to a tight price, and shoppers regularly report that the quality can be hit and miss from one delivery to the next. One month it's passable, the next it feels thinner, rougher, and more prone to tearing in your hand. That inconsistency is the real issue. A rougher, thinner sheet means more friction. And for older skin that's already more delicate, that constant rubbing is exactly what you don't want. And then there's the subscription itself. The whole model is designed so you set it and forget it, which is convenient right up until the quality slips and you don't quite get around to cancelling. You end up locked into a steady supply of paper you're not really happy with, simply because sorting it out feels like more hassle than just putting up with it. Convenience is worth something, I won't pretend it isn't. But convenience shouldn't mean quietly settling for a rougher deal every single month. And just to be absolutely clear, because there's an awful lot of nonsense floating around online about hidden chemicals in these things, Presto's paper is standard cellulose, and I've seen nothing whatsoever to suggest anything sinister in it. The issue here is plain and simple quality and consistency, not some secret ingredient. And that brings us all the way to number 1, and to a betrayal that long-time British shoppers have felt in their bones for years. Number 1. Ondrex Classic Clean. We started this list with Ondrex, and we're ending with it too because the biggest name in British toilet roll has earned its place at the very top for a completely different reason. Not chemicals, not plumbing, but something that quietly stings every loyal customer who's been buying it for decades. Shrinkflation. Cast your mind back to those classic adverts, the Labrador puppy grabbing the end of the roll and charging off through the house, the paper unspooling endlessly down the staircase and along the landing, seemingly without end. That single image sold the whole idea of Ondrex. It was generous, it was abundant, you felt like you were buying something that would last and last. Now look at the roll in your hand today, because according to Which's testing in 2026, a standard Ondrex roll has quietly shrunk from around 200 sheets down to roughly 155. That's a big drop, and it's happened gradually, a handful of sheets at a time, precisely so you wouldn't notice it happening. The rolls have got narrower, the core often feels wider, and the price, needless to say, hasn't come down to match. And here's the sleight of hand that really gets me. To get anywhere near that old sense of abundance now, you have to reach for the so-called mega roll, which carries around 235 sheets. In other words, the thing that used to be a bog-standard everyday roll has quietly been repackaged as a premium upgrade you're expected to pay extra for. That's the trick in a nutshell. Yesterday's normal has become today's luxury, and the ordinary roll has been shrunk down beneath it. When those same consumer testers at Which put more than 25 brands through their paces this year, this is exactly the sort of quiet erosion they're trying to hold a light up to. It doesn't stop there. When Ondrex rebranded its premium quilted line from Supreme Quilts to Ultimate Quilts, a lot of loyal buyers weren't shy about their disappointment at all. Reviews poured in complaining that the new paper felt thinner and fell apart more easily than the version they trusted for years. Same beloved name, same reassuring puppy, but a product that plenty of people insist just isn't what it used to be. It slots neatly into that broader feeling, shared by so many older shoppers, that somewhere in the last few years, the whole category quietly took a step down and simply hoped nobody would say anything. And this is really the heart of it. So many long-time buyers keep reaching for Andrex out of pure habit and trust, because the name feels safe, because it's what their mum always bought, because that puppy feels like an old friend. But that trust is being quietly traded on, that endless roll tumbling down the stairs in the advert. Today it wouldn't make it past the first landing. The brand is charging you the same for noticeably less and banking on your loyalty to stop you noticing. That, more than any chemical or any blockage, is why Andrex Classic Clean sits right at the top of this list. It's the slow erosion of a promise that generations of British families grew up trusting completely. Right, before we get to the good news, if you're tired of being treated like a walking cash machine by these big companies, do hit that subscribe button. We dig into a different supermarket aisle every single week, and there's plenty more where this came from. So, how do you actually escape all of this? The dust, the fragrance, the shrinking rolls, and the false economies. It's simpler than the marketing wants you to believe. Look for paper that clearly states it's either 100% recycled or made from bamboo, so you're not relying on freshly bleached virgin forest just to flush it away. Look for the words chlorine-free or elemental chlorine-free. Steer well clear of anything advertising a scented core, a fragrance, or a lotion. And take those softness adverts with a pinch of salt, because the plushest, thickest roll is very often the one causing you the most trouble. With all that in mind, here are 4 that genuinely earn their place in your bathroom. First, Serious Tissues. This is a British-made roll manufactured from 100% post-consumer recycled paper, which means it isn't cutting down a single fresh tree. It's chlorine-free and dye-free. There's no added perfume, and it comes wrapped in paper rather than plastic. The company has also moved towards genuine carbon reduction commitments rather than vague hand-wavy slogans. It's the sort of honest, no-nonsense product that does exactly what it says on the wrapper. The only real catch is that you won't always spot it on a supermarket shelf, as it's mostly sold online and in bulk, but for a plain, decent, guilt-free roll, it's a genuinely strong choice. Second, the Cheeky Panda. This one's made from FSC-certified bamboo, which grows back remarkably fast and doesn't need the heavy chemical treatment that virgin wood pulp does. The brand describes it as naturally hypoallergenic, and importantly, it tends to shed far less of that annoying white dust than the bulk warehouse rolls we talked about earlier. It's also now widely stocked, so you'll find it in Tesco, Waitrose, Boots, and plenty of other shops. I'll be fair and say the brand did have its knuckles rapped by the advertising watchdog in early 2026 over some of its wider marketing claims, so take the very greenest slogans with a pinch of salt. But as a soft, low-dust, fragrance-free everyday roll, it holds up well. Third, Bamboo. Another premium bamboo option, and a nicely made one. Every roll comes individually wrapped in paper rather than plastic, the sheets are long and generous, and the paper is elemental chlorine-free, so it skips the harshest bleaching. The brand states its rolls are 100% bamboo, and it's worth knowing that Which actually questioned that figure back in 2024, after which Bamboo hit back by publishing its own independent lab tests to defend the claim. It's mainly sold online by subscription, so it's not a grab-it-on-the-way-home sort of product, but if you want a premium plastic-free roll and you're happy to order ahead, it's a solid pick. Fourth, and for my money the strongest of the whole lot, who gives a crap? The Premium Bamboo range. This is FSC-certified bamboo with no inks, no dyes, no scents, and chlorine-free whitening. It's a certified B Corp, which means it's held to some genuinely rigorous standards, and they're refreshingly honest about the fact that the bamboo is grown and the paper made in China, rather than trying to bury it in the small print. The final product is independently checked to be free of the very additives and fragrances that landed so many rolls on our avoid list. It comes plastic-free, and the company puts a big chunk of its profits towards building toilets and clean water in parts of the world that badly need them. Soft, clean, honest, and doing a bit of good along the way. It's hard to ask much more from a toilet roll than that, and that's the lot. 8 rolls to think twice about, and 4 that genuinely deserve a spot in your cupboard. The plain truth is that the simplest, most honest paper is very often the kindest to your skin, your pipes, and your pocket, no matter what the puppies and koalas on the packaging want you to believe. If this saved you a bit of money or spared you some grief, please give it a like, click that hype button, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And tell me in the comments which supermarket aisle we should investigate next. Until next time, stay sharp, stay healthy, and protect your plate.